Well, good evening. Good to be with you again. Our text is going to be Philippians 4, verses 4 through 7. And so we'll be examining that this evening, even in a closing point of an in-depth look into those particular verses. But I begin with an exercise, if you're willing to participate. I have 4 verses I would like to share with you. And by examining them, I would like for you to tell me what the common denominator is as we launch into our study tonight. Jeremiah 23, verse 23, the Bible asks, "Am I a God at hand, said the Lord, and not a God afar off?" Got it? Next verse, Joel 1, verse 15. "Alas, for the day of the Lord is at hand, and as a destruction from the Almighty shall it come." Are you thinking? Third verse, Matthew 4 and verse number 17. "From that time Jesus began to preach and to say, 'Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand.'" One more. You ready? The fourth one, from Mark 14 and verse 42. "Rise up, let us go. Lo, he that betrayeth me is at hand." Thoughts? What is the common denominator? Hand? Time? Excuse me? Urgency? Urgency. Here's what I got. At hand. Which goes to the points that you mentioned, obviously. But the common denominator in all those was this particular phrase, at hand. And it's used throughout the text of the Bible, from the beginning all the way to the end. And it appears in our text tonight in Philippians 4, in verse number 5, nestled between verses 4 and 7 that we're going to be looking at tonight, you find here in verse number 5, "Let your moderation or your gentleness," if you're in a New King, "be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand." That's an important statement. And so for a few minutes, as you may have already discovered in your bulletin, we're going to look at this idea of the Lord is at hand. I thought about this initially as an emphatic statement because the word "is," if you notice in your Bible, is in italics. That means it's been added by the translators so that we can understand the forcefulness of the sentence. And so I like it. The Lord is at hand, because there's so many people that don't understand that, do they? He absolutely is a God that is close to us, and that is a fact that we begin with tonight. First of all, this particular fact, and it is a fact, though the world may not agree with that, the fact is He is right here among us. The earth and all of the things that we can see prove of His majesty and His glory and His ability. And the fact that He is right here with us should be a comforting thought. And this particular verse that we began with, in verse number 5, it says, "The Lord is at hand." Do you know a Bible passage that is not true? I don't either. And so we could just end right here. The Bible said it, and so it's true. And so here, and we're going to see in our last point tonight, there is a meaning that word, that phraseology is here. And so notice that He is at hand. He is near. Now, just to build on that idea so that we can make our point of this is absolutely a true fact, please understand that in Acts 17 and verse number 27, Paul, as you remember, has gone through the city of Athens, and he has seen all of the various devotions that are erected, and he comes to decry unto them about the one that is marked the unknown God. And so he is invited by the Areopagus to go out into Mars Hill and to speak to them about this unknown God. And so he takes great joy in explaining to these Greek philosophers which are the Stoics and the Epicureans, about this God that is at hand, that is near to us. And so much of this that he speaks flies in the face of a lot of their philosophies, Greek philosophy of the day. And one of the points that he makes actually points back to the verse that we started with, Jeremiah 23 and verse 23, as he says, he is not far from every one of us. Now, this is something that was amazing to them, and sadly, as you look around, it is something that is amazing to other people that aren't aware of what's actually going on with God and his presence. Here's a little poem that I found that I'll share with you to kind of make this particular point. Oh, where is the sea? The fishes cried as they swam the crystal waters through. We've heard from old the ocean's tide, and we long to look on the waters blue. The wise ones speak of an infinite sea. Oh, who can tell us if such there be? Here are the fishes swimming in the sea, wondering where this infinite ocean is. Doesn't that really make the point? We are sometimes unaware that God is right here with us. And that is, he is at hand. If you go back to Revelation chapter 1, which we just studied not too long ago under David, you remember that in the very first chapter, Jesus is being described in such a majestic fashion, and it says here that he is amidst the golden candlesticks. And in verse number 20, behind the plus here, we find out that the golden candlesticks are the churches. And so Jesus is right here with us. I would say that that is the Lord being at hand, wouldn't you? He is right here with us. And so, how fitting is it that you see in Matthew 1 and verse number 23 that God is with us? That's who Jesus is. Emmanuel, described in Matthew 1 and verse 23, is God with us. And so that continues to go to the point, building on Philippians 4 verse 5, that he is a God at hand. Now, if you go to verse number 6, notice that he is at hand and he's only a prayer away. Here's a thought. Here recently, I've had several people tell me in great kindness and love, hey, don't forget, if you need us, we're just a phone call away. And what does that mean? I can be there in a second. I am here to help. All you got to do is pick up the phone. That's how close God is. He's only a prayer away. And notice that Paul mentions here by prayer. Prayer is obviously the communication that we have talking to our Father. But supplication is an important word that's used here in conjunction with prayer, because supplication is really an intensified request, even a personal request. Please be with Jimmy Hobbs tomorrow as he goes through this catheterization. That is a personal request that each of us could make. Be with Miss Sandra as she is dealing with this physical therapy. Those are supplications, right? And so he is only a prayer away, and so for you, aren't you glad that he is a God that is at hand? 1 Peter 3 verse number 12 says that his ears and his eyes are open unto who? The righteous. And so aren't you glad that he is at hand? He is right here amongst us, and he is only a prayer away. James 4 and verse number 8, it really kind of comes into focus now as you think about him being so very close. We are told by James, draw nigh unto God and he will draw nigh unto you. It's all about proximity. And so yes, absolutely, building on Philippians 4 and verse number 5, the Lord is at hand. I mean, he is right here with us, right? And so, it is actually a fact. Well, what does that mean exactly? You know, when you think about a fact, you know, you think about immersion in Romans chapter 6, and we find out that it is participation in the death, burial, and the resurrection of Christ. And so you're asking questions such as, well, how do you participate in a historical fact? And so Paul explains that. Well, here, maybe we might have the same question as it relates to this particular fact. How is it that we relate to such a phrase as the Lord is at hand? Knowing He is right here, He's only a prayer away, He is amongst us. What does that mean exactly? Well, you go back to a place like Proverbs 15 and verse number 3, and Solomon says that the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. Did you see yesterday, Ben, or the other day, I guess it was yesterday, when the spring came off of their lawnmower? You didn't see that? How come?
I wasn't there.
You wasn't here? Okay, all right. But in the context, God saw it. You see, Ben may not have been near, but God was. And so in order to see a thing or to hear a thing, proximity is everything, isn't it? And so notice that Solomon says that God sees and hears all. That is about His proximity. He is right there with us. He actually is at hand. Here's another example. If you go back to the burning bush, you remember what the Lord told Moses there? In verse number 7 of this text, He said, I have seen and I have heard and I know. That almost gives you chills, doesn't it? Because even Moses didn't know about it. He had been 40 years removed in Midian, walking the sheep every day. But God says, I have seen and I have heard and I know their affliction. That's because He's been right there with them. And that's an interesting thing to behold, because if you remember, they were there for 430 years. Not one word from God. 430 years of silence, divine silence that took place there. But yet He saw and He heard. So maybe they didn't think that God was there, but guess what? All along, He was, because He knew exactly what they were going through. That's what He told Moses. In Hebrews 4 and verse number 13, we are told that all things are naked and open unto Him with whom we have to do. And so He sees all. And so absolutely, He is a God at hand. And what that means is He sees you. He is listening to you. He knows what you're going through. And He is there for you. Romans chapter 10 and verse number 8. The reason that He is close to us, the reason that He spends so much time with us, is that He wants us to know Him. Right? And so you think about Romans 10 verse number 8, Thy word is nigh in my mouth and in my heart. We accomplish this through letting it dwell within us. Colossians 3:16, right? Letting the word dwell within you. And so we have to digest the word. And so He is just as near as we allow Him to be. Kind of like Satan, right? The only proximity that Satan has in our life is what we allow him to have, right? What's the same thing with God? Drawing nigh unto Him, as James said. In Psalm 116, verses 1 and 2, the psalmist here says, I love the Lord because He hath heard my voice in supplications. There's this word again, those intense requests that we make. Because He hath inclined His ear unto me. My grandpa, years ago, bless his pea-picking heart. He was like me, only worse. He couldn't hear. He would have the TV, that little black and white, set, sit up there on the kitchen table, and it was on max. And he was like this. That's the idea of inclining the ear. And the Bible shows us that God's ear is inclined unto us. There's a need to hear. There's a necessity to hear. There's a desire to hear. As you read those particular words, He wants to hear. And so in Psalm 4 and verse number 1, hear me when I call. There's a song written out of that very phraseology. Beautiful song. Great to be sung in the shower, by the way. In Psalm 4 and verse 1, hear me when I call. He is so close to us. He is listening. He is seeing. and he knows our cares. In Hebrews 4, in verse number 16, notice that he is there because he wants to help us in our time of need. And so, for us to have the ability to go to him that we might obtain something, or that we might find something, shows that he is one that is willing to give unto us. And so he is near enough that he is standing ready to assist. You know, when David had the issue the other day with the lawnmower, it took some time to go all the way into town and come all the way back, wrong part, all the way back to town and all the way back. That stuff takes time, doesn't it? With God, it's instant. The comfort, the patience, all of that he offers, it's instant. And so he's that near that he can help us in our time of need and help us immediately. 2 Timothy 4:1, along the same lines, notice that the Lord is the one that's going to be the one that judges us. Now, the reason that I stuck this in there is because here's the thought. I don't know that I would want Tanya to be the one judging me in the last day, because me and Tanya, we don't really know each other that well, right? We don't spend that much time together, so she doesn't know a lot about me as I don't know a lot about her. But God does. And so who better to be our judge in the last day than the one that is with us every moment of every hour, of every week, of every month, of every year of our lives? That's the one that I want judging me. And so he is near, he is at hand, and he is prepared in the last day to judge us. And he is so near that even as James mentions, he is standing before the door. He is prepared for that particular act. And so, my friends, it is a fact that he is at hand. We have seen that prolifically in the Scriptures. And also, we have understood what that means for him to be at hand. That is, he is seeing, he is hearing, he knows what we are dealing with. He is ready to help. He wants to help. He's only a prayer away. But having that in mind, in view of that fact, how do we respond now? Well, the answer is right here in verses 4, 5, 6, and 7. You don't have to look very far. Now, if you go back and you begin in verse number 4, we are told that we are to rejoice in the Lord always. Well, what's in the very next verse? The Lord is at hand. And so my estimation of this particular response is that we should be a people that live ultimately in a perpetual state of joy. Because here God is standing with me, by me, he's for me, he's ready to help, he wants to help, he sees, he hears, he's ready. And so why not rejoice? You know, anybody here a parent? Anybody here a grandparent? We have just been thrilled. Yesterday, our grandson was delivered to us from down in Athens. And in great anticipation all week long, we were kind of making preparations because we actually didn't know exactly when he was going to come. But we knew the proximity of the time. But last night when he arrived, he's now close to us. And so hope has turned into reality, right? As a grandparent, are you happier? Are you more joyful when the kids are actually here on your lap? Or when they're off at a ball game somewhere and you're seeing on YouTube something that's going on and you're not in the same proximity as they are? Are you happier, parents, when the children come home from school or when they're at school away from you? When we are close with them, isn't that the greatest time? Isn't it when we have the most joy? And so, my friends, the nearer we are to God, the more joyful we ought to be. And so, surely, in verse number 4, as he says, rejoice, knowing that he is that near, we should be a people that rejoice evermore. And no matter what the situation. You know, the world is in turmoil, And we, much like Habakkuk, are wondering, God, are you aware of what's going on? Or do you see all of this? How long are you going to let this go on? We ask those questions, don't we, as we watch the news and whatnot. And that's the same problem that Habakkuk was having. Ultimately, if you'll read the beginning of the book, he's asking, how long? Are you not watching? And God says, I got this, son. I'm sending the Chaldeans. Which kind of blows his mind because the Chaldeans are horrible people. But notice further into the book, in chapter number 3, no matter what befalls us, the fig trees not blooming, no fruit in the vines, and on, no matter what befalls us, notice what he says. Verse number 18 says, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. And so knowing that he is near, knowing that he has everything in his hand, he's taking care of the situation. Maybe not in a way that I understand, but knowing that he is near and in control, and he sees and he hears, he knows how I feel, he knows my cares, I will always rejoice, no matter what hurricane's going on outside the front door. And that's a great comfort. So we are to be a people of rejoicing. Second, even from the same verse that we were in, verse number 5, let your moderation be known unto all men. This is the idea of gentleness. And again, if you've got a New King James Version, that's what you're reading right now. Gentleness. Gentleness is the idea of forbearance. I think we talked about that in our gospel meeting to some degree with Ronnie. He talked about forbearance and gentleness. It's a state of mildness in your life. It's the way that you deal with others, even in patience. And so, knowing that the Lord is at hand, what? Be a gentle one. Interesting thought. Titus chapter 3, verse 2, along the same lines, we are told that we are to speak evil of no man. We're not to be brawlers, but there it is again. A people of moderation. A people that are gentle, forbearing one another. And Paul didn't just say it, but he lived it. And that's the point of 1 Thessalonians 2 and verse 7 is placed before you. Because he told the Thessalonians, he said, but we were gentle among you, even as a nurse cherisheth her children. Boy, does that give a picture. He said that's the way he behaved with them. And remember, that was the answer to the call that he got in Troas, to come over and help us. A poor people that needed the gospel, and he said, while I was with you, I treated you in a gentle fashion. So not only did he say it, but he acted it. And so knowing that the Lord is at hand, let us not just be a rejoicing people, a joyful people, but let us be a gentle people. The Lord is at hand. Verse 5. Verse number 6. Notice, be careful for nothing. Knowing that the Lord is at hand, the very words right before this statement, don't be anxious. Whew, hard to say, or easy to say, hard to accomplish in our lives many times, isn't it? And so, Jesus would give this great exhortation in Matthew 6, beginning in verse 25, where he talks about this idea of not being anxious. And it is something that can be accomplished as we mature in the faith, because ultimately what we come to find out is the things for which we are anxious, we really couldn't have anything to do with them anyway. Our stature, the color of our hair, the number of hair in our head, all of those things. There's nothing that we could have done about it in the first place, so why worry about it? And so, one way to live, knowing that he is at hand, is to not be an anxious soul. Even along those same lines in 1 Timothy 6 and verse number 8, having food and raiment, let us therewith be content. It's hard to be content when you walk into Walmart, isn't it? You need that. It's on sale. Why not have it? What you have is insufficient. You need bigger and better. So it is something that society trains us, to some degree, to be a discontented people, isn't it? I mean, we see the advertisements on TV. We see all of the things around us encouraging us not to be content. But God says, if you're going to live around me, because He is near, He is at hand. He wants us to be a content people. So in Philippians 4 and verse number 6, beyond that, be anxious for nothing. Notice that a people living with God right here with them, a God that's at hand, we must be a people that pray a lot. How awkward would it be? I mean, it is, and we've all experienced this. You know when you get in the elevator with Jimmy John, you don't know who in the world you're standing next to, and you go 6 flights and you're... Aren't you just begging to say something? Nice weather we're having. Right? Isn't that an awkward moment? You're standing in an elevator with somebody that you don't know, and it is awkward. How much more awkward is it to live your life right next to the God that is with you and never say a thing to Him? What an awkward thing. We've used imagery like if Jacob were to come to our house and never speak to me. Something going on? Have I done something? Is there an issue? Why are you not talking to me? It would be awkward, wouldn't it? And I would wonder how much more then, with the God that is at hand, wondering, what have I done to offend Him? Why is He not talking to me? A God that is at hand. What we need to do, and the picture that I've placed before you, is the idea of what we need to do is turn our cares into prayers. God is waiting to hear from us because He is that near. So we are a rejoicing people, certainly. We are a praying people. We are a people that are not anxious because He is right there with us. And we are those that talk to Him. We communicate with Him regularly. Along those same lines, the Apostle John said, "And this is the confidence that we have in Him, that if we ask anything according to His will, He heareth us." That is powerful, isn't it? Knowing that He is listening, knowing that He wants to help you, and He's right here. All you have to do is speak to Him. Verse number 15, "And if we know that He hears whatsoever we ask, we know that we have the petitions that we desire of Him." Certainly, that gives comfort, that gives solace, that gives peace of mind. And so for us, knowing that He is listening, knowing that He is waiting to help, what a great blessing it is to be a people that pray without ceasing. 1 Thessalonians 5, verse number 17. We are a people that must communicate with our God because He is at hand. He is here with us. And so why not talk to Him? And then, additionally, if you go back and you study Philippians 4 and verse 7, the end of our text, notice that if we have acknowledged the fact of His nearness, the safety that is offered there, the comfort that is offered there, and we understand why He is there, that is seeing and hearing and listening. He's talking to us through the Word. We're talking to Him through prayer. There's a great blessing that follows if we will live the rejoicing, non-anxious, prayerful, communicating life that we've just seen in verses 4, 5, and 6. Verse 7 says, "Peace belongs to you." And so we've been given this pattern. Knowing that the Lord is at hand, what do? We allow Him to comfort us. And He is the God of all comfort. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. The God of all comfort stands ready to give you peace, comfort, solace. It belongs to you if you'll just follow the pattern. So yes, indeed, the Lord is at hand. That is a fact. He is here for you. He is here with you. As we saw in Revelation 1, He is walking amongst the candlesticks. He's here with us now. But how do we respond to that? Rejoice evermore. Show your gentleness to all mankind. Be a people that are not anxious. Be a people that are prayerful, always communicating with the Father, praying without ceasing. And then verse 7, peace will be yours. What a great pattern for life. And maybe this will be a help to us as we have the opportunity to begin our new week. And I hope that your weeks are great. I love every one of you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to encourage us as we start a new week. But if you're with us tonight and you need to obey the gospel, you need to respond to that loving call, we have the opportunity to do that tonight while the family is gathered together. If you need the prayers of the congregation because of a struggle that you're dealing with, because of some sort of instance that is going on in your life, we're ready to do that too. So while we are here together in one room, if you need us, let it be known while together we stand and while we sing.